Get started. Happy Thursday and good afternoon. Welcome to the Environment and Transportation's Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Open Spaces Subcommittee. We will be discussing one bill today, which is HB 506, the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act. I guess between last night, I certainly was here late, too late, and between the times that we were on the floor, which I also did not get to see, there have been a couple more amendments, and I think Kristen was kind enough to put them in the reprint of the bill. And so we will be taking this time, hopefully half an hour, 45 minutes at the most, to go through this bill. And as we get questions answered, hopefully, and everyone's good within the committee, end up adopting amendments and then potentially moving forward. One quick question, because I have not seen the reprint fully. Kristen, Secretary Kurtz submitted language for an amendment as it relates to Delegate Jacobs' concerns about the charter boat folks. Did you see that?
I did see that, and I did incorporate that
Okay.
language that gives nod to the charter boat
Yes.
captains.
Okay. All right. So do we want to, and Meredith, does everyone have the most recent uh, reprint?
Yep, I sent it around right before the meeting
Okay.
started. It's also in the
Kristen, you wanted, Kristen, I mean, not Kristen, Meredith, do you want to pull up and we can go through the bill?
Actually, it might be easier if Kristen pulls it up. I'm still letting people into the waiting room and I can't do both at the
No
same.
problem. Does she have access to do so?
I do.
Okay.
Um,
Am I very early?
You're right on time. Okay.
so the copy I had, I'd started to highlight it just to show where the changes are, but I don't think I highlighted all the changes. So
No problem.
so we left off, we were going to talk about the definition section that Delegate Stein was proposing. And the department, I believe, may have suggested to Delegate Stein to place these definitions into section 8-701,
Right.
which relates to the agricultural water quality cost sharing program. And so from a drafting perspective, these terms aren't mentioned, I don't think, in that subtitle. So I moved them to the new subtitle, which is referencing those. So I did that as a drafting. So I'm not sure if I know we were sharing quick emails before this all started. So I'm not sure if there's more to that. But for now, I placed them into the language that's establishing the LEAF program. And it would add a definition of fixed natural buffer, and as well as 100-foot tidal buffer. And the purpose of that is because under the LEAF program, the department would be developing and promoting a suite of conservation practices and community best practices eligible for the program. And the bill includes a list of, it illustrates, the types of practices that could be included in that. And we have language that would be adding the installation of a fixed natural buffer, including within a 100-foot buffer. It's also adding another practice to the list of this of best practices, and that would be partnering with operators to improve conservation practices on leased land.
Yep. Okay. We're gonna, Kristen, if you don't mind, for time and efficiency, we'll just go through it, the bill again, and then we'll open it up for questions and address any concerns or so on and so forth. So.
Okay, so we were also just talking about where the bill is establishing the Maryland Leaders and Environmentally Engaged Farming Program.
Okay.
Um, You want to just go by from, like we did last time, just go through it all?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, the bill is introduced, including funding provisions for the LEAF program. We have an amendment that would, direct the governor to include at least $900,000 to the fund each year, beginning fiscal year 2026. The bill included language relating to funding for the tree program. I believe the references to the LEAF program and these provisions are no longer relevant, so there was an amendment to take this out of the bill. Here we have updating the definition of healthy soils to include regenerative practices and traditions. And then a definition is also included of regenerative practices and traditions. You want me to just keep rolling through, or are you going to do questions? Okay.
I'm going to hold questions to the end. Thank you.
Okay. So then here, so on page 9, line 12, the bill establishes that a person who has a titled fish license or commercial Chesapeake Channel license does not need to be licensed as a food establishment in order to harvest and process finfish on a vessel by Ikejima for direct sale to restaurants.
Well done, Kristen.
I have to think about it. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but that's how it sounds in my head.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And then we have provisions establishing a water quality monitoring program within DNR. And we have amendment language that would authorize the department to assess and incorporate water quality monitoring data that meets the quality assurance and use goals of the state data sets into the water quality monitoring program. Here are the provisions that relate to fishery management plans. And the bill came in making changes. The amendments, so initially there was provisions were taken out regarding the department's responsibilities to prepare fishery management plans for a number of species. And so the amendment language does put back in some of the listed species where the department must prepare a plan.
Kristen, just going back to the list, cow nose rays is included because I'm always confused about the
Sure, it's hard
yes.
to see, but you're correct. And so it's hard to see, but that bracket is being stricken
Okay.
from the bill. We added a new or new item,
Got it.
Roman
I
7.
just couldn't see. Sorry about that. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it can be hard. It's visually confusing sometimes too. So let's see, just want to make sure. So here I think so we're adding advisory commissions. There's a typo in this one, but to when Maryland would be preparing a Maryland specific supplement to plans that are prepared by the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission. So language here relating to the conservation and management measures that are implemented under fishery management plan may not discriminate unfairly among certain groups. And here's where the language was added to give nod to charter boat captains. So it may not discriminate unfairly among groups of commercial and recreational fishing participants, including individuals licensed to guide fishing parties and charter boat captains. That language is, again, including, so this would be so so again, the language is being added to when notice is being provided to certain communities. That would include commercial fishing participants, including those that are licensed to guide fishing parties and charter boat captains, and recreational fishing participants. So these provisions here, we're talking about the aquaculture lease issuance and reporting, which is the bill's making changes to procedures and requirements that apply to the issuance of aquaculture leases. Starting on line 17, it's establishing a new subtitle authorizing the department to lease land owned or managed by the department to a person implementing practices that support healthy soils and regenerative practices and traditions. And then the next provisions relate to the whole watershed restoration partnership permit coordination. And it's adding requirements under the partnership that the state management team and project sponsor meet as soon as possible after a project is approved, inviting all relevant state and federal agencies to develop a plan for permitting the project, that the permit tracking dashboard that DNR must establish include the plan for permitting the project, and that a project sponsor provide quarterly updates to the state management team with information necessary for the permit tracking dashboard. That's the requirements right up here then. Mm. Mm. So there's uncodified language requiring the Department of Environment to authorize oyster restoration projects to generate water quality trading credits and develop a process for certifying water quality trading credits that are generated by an oyster restoration project. And then,
We're at the end.
so yeah, so then section, the uncodified section in section 4 is establishing that the requirements established under current law for stream and floodplain restoration projects do not take effect until July 1st, 2025, and do not apply to permit or license applications submitted to MDE before July 1st, 2025.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And with that, I'm going to start with Delegate Ruth. She had her hand up first, and then we'll go from there.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Okay, Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was way back near the beginning, and I think I may have just missed something, so hopefully it's short. We struck a whole lot of different species of fish from this bill. Is it just because they're already covered under other advisory management boards or fishery? So they're already covered. We're just not having to cover them in this bill. Is that right? I know Delegate Jacobs is nodding his head, and I know he knows a lot about this stuff, so.
I think the secretary's on here.
Okay.
Secretary
Yeah.
Attic and or Safe from the governor's office. Which one wants to take this question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will take this question. So Delegate Guyton, your response is actually correct. So there's a number of other different fisheries management that we're incorporating, which overlaps those species. So our goal here is to streamline the whole fisheries management plan within that agency.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't because we didn't like those particular species, but that's what I figured it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is, I have two questions and I'll ask them both and then that'll be it for me. So my first question is, how do the different fishery management councils mesh? So there's a reference to regional fishery management councils. And
Can you
then there's
speak the page number that you're speaking about, please? Thank
well, I think it's just in general.
you. Okay, fine.
But I think it starts on page 18. I could be wrong about that.
18.
Yeah, but there it talks about a regional fishery management council, and then later on it talks about the Atlantic, or maybe earlier
Yes.
it talks about the Atlantic fishery management council. So my first question is, how do those all work together? Briefly, if you could explain that. And then my second question is, there are references to the whole Watershed Act in here, I believe. And my recollection of that act was that it's 5 projects. So my second question is that what we're talking about? One of those 5 projects in the parts of the bill that reference the whole watershed? Or is that just whole watershed as a term about a particular area? Or
It's supposed to represent the actual project, but I'll let the secretary.
okay, those are my 2 questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try my best to answer those, Delegate Foley. So DNR manages a number of those different, Fisheries Commission and the species that are managed under those. So the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council, NOAA Fisheries, etc. So this just allows us to incorporate all of those in a streamlined manner so that all the different type of species that are managed under those commissions, federal, regional, and local, we would be able to manage them in a streamlined process. So it authorizes the department to incorporate this. We are right now, because of our Commerce Pact, Interstate Commerce Pact, we're already required to do those managements. We're just incorporating and codifying that language.
Okay, so it's going to put them all under one, like it's going to be one list. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And
My second question? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to clarify also about Delegate Foley. It's also that one is not doing one thing and one's doing something else, and then another one's doing nothing else. Is they're all doing it or they're not? Is that correct, Safe?
So we are able to incorporate all of them in a streamlined manner. There's another piece, Madam Chair, that we are able to incorporate supplement plans as well. So if there's any additional changes that Maryland needs to do in order to, manage those species, we can provide supplement plans there as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Delegate Foley.
No, well, my second question was the one about the whole Watershed Act and the project.
I'm sorry. You know what? go ahead. I don't know if I don't, well, yes, I don't know if I see DNR, I don't see MDE, but again, Safe if you want to speak to it.
Of course, thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate Foley, that's a really great question. So over the interim, DNR, MDE, our office and a few other folks have worked diligently to identify the best way for us to streamline our permitting process for the whole watershed projects. There are 5 projects that are selected. The rationale behind this is there's a timeline, right? And Kristen mentioned that the section 5 of it, that this process will only be applicable for 5 years, aligned with the whole watershed timeline. So our goal is all of those projects, as they're applying for their permits, instead of going through your existing permit queue and wait for those permits to be addressed, we are able to streamline those, collaborating with the sponsors of those specific projects. So it is a limited scope so that we can better streamline those projects under whole watershed and identify any potential progress or ideas that we can incorporate into our permitting process for watersheds down the road after whole watershed partnership is over.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Delegate Otto.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I still have concerns here and want some more explanation on the definition of healthy soils and who was consulted to create these definitions and the structure of it.
Yeah, we can have that discussion if the departments want to weigh in on that. I think we touched on it a little bit last time, and I think Delegate Otto, if I'm correct, the concern may be for you is that we do have these soil conservation districts, and we're probably wondering whether or not they support this definition and whether or not they had input in this definition.
Yeah.
Can we get a response from the department or from SAFE?
Secretary Addix?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Safe, Kevin Addix here. I do know that our 2 departments, DNR and MDA, did work collaboratively, and that members of the farming community that engage in traditional regenerative practices and traditions were consulted. There was discussion and input sought. I will say that we at the Department of Ag have received input that that this is, while this is not a definition of regenerative agriculture, it's a good step and it gives some parameters going forward that can be pointed to. I will tell you that our Agriculture Commission just yesterday took a vote to begin working on a proposed definition, a full definition of regenerative agriculture, which will be presented by October of this year. So there will be lots of input. That will be a pretty big tent discussion to come up with an actual definition of regenerative agriculture. This is instead a way just to create some parameters that we can point to within our Healthy Soils program, but also the DNR when they're talking about leasing some of their land to not the commodity farmers, but folks who are interested in the longer term leases to grow food, can use as a reference.
Well, tell me here on page 8, line 7, draws on traditions and innovations from African, indigenous, and original land stewards. Now, what's the definition of those aspects?
But to me, and I'll let certainly the secretary answer that. To me, I think about things that I learned in school, like slash and burn. Now, I don't know if there's any laws against being able to slash and burn fields because it's a kind of a controlled burn. But I when I think about those type of when I think about this definition, which is certainly very broad, I think about those type of practices. But Secretary Addix.
Well, I think I will echo my prior comment and Delegate Otto. I'm not sure that this will be a direct answer to your question, but I'll say it anyway. This is meant to be very broad. This right here was not an attempt to define regenerative agriculture, which is a big discussion. And as I noted, our Agriculture Commission within the department has decided to take that on and will be inviting every single group and organization to be part of that discussion, soil conservation, and much beyond, Farm Bureau, Future Harvest, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and I don't want to speak for Secretary Kurtz, whose team was also very engaged in this, that the goal was to give voice to communities and traditions that are not necessarily represented in any other part of the code. In other words, traditional versus non-traditional. You've got commodity agriculture, which frankly a lot of our code is based around. This is just the first attempt to give a nod to other types of practices, and it is, I'll go out on a limb and say it is appropriately vague to allow further clarification as we go.
So how does that fall into the formula for determining these healthy soils? It's something that will be considered, or
it's something that's considered. It is not binding, right? So this is not a requirement. This is not something that we will assess or regulate per se. It is something that will be used in terms of when our Healthy Soils program meets again and kind of charts a course for the future. Just making sure that our as I use the tent reference, that our tent's a little bit bigger. We have heard from communities, and they're named in here, Native American communities, African diaspora communities who feel as though our code, our ethos, down to our forms not being in every language, it needs to be a bit more representative. And so this is just an attempt to say somewhere in our code, and we thought it was best in the Healthy Soils Code because frankly, that's what regenerative is about. It's about making sure that the soil is as productive as possible.
Oh, have you had input from the Farm Bureau or anything on these functions and these matters?
I believe they supported this bill, Delegate Otto. I don't think there was much to none opposition. I believe the grain producers, the Farm Bureau, all of these groups supported this bill. And this part of the bill is not what we just amended in. It was already in the original bill. And so I think that they do nod to this, a yes to this, because they supported the bill as a whole.
In our last discussion, you talked about the panel of scientists you had, I think during the bill hearing, that are going to determine these healthy soils.
Yes, we have a soil health committee.
Oh, was the Soil Health Consortium consulted in these elements, or?
I will have to check on that. I'm not sure we've got our full soil health team on here. You've got Rachel and I at the moment.
Oh my.
Well, don't
some of these, one of the items is increased soil organic matter and improved soil structure and all. Would that include applications of organic matter as such as manures and things?
It would. It would, and though that's existing code, that's not being added. So that's what we've based our program upon up to this point. And as you know, we're very supportive of animal manure, chicken manure being used as a nutrient, of course, with all of the caveats of inappropriate levels and where appropriate. But yes, that's core to our goals.
And just to clarify for Delegate Otto, none of this in here changes any allowance for current practices in ag, correct?
That's correct.
Delegate Otto, the floor is still yours.
All right, thank you. Well, I'll stop at that for now.
I
Thank
mean, you
Madam
can keep
Chair.
going. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd like to hammer this
I'm
out.
just getting tired with it.
You're getting tired of having
Well,
opportunities.
I think things come out of the air and
Okay.
all of a sudden and
Well, we're gonna keep pulling from the air.
right.
Safe, did you want to add to this? And then I see Lindsay Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick note from the DNR's perspective. DNR is one of the largest entity that lease lands to a lot of our farmers. And over the course of last year or so, we have had a number of conversations with Secretary Addicks' team, a lot of the farmers, especially farmers who are practicing regenerative practices currently. We had a few of the folks who are on our panels as well. So to go back to Delegate Otto's point, it is expanding our scope of the way we are doing things. We're being more additive to the approach. It grants new authority to DNR through this legislation that allows us to provide long-term leases for DNR, but also for farmers to incorporate various different method and mechanism to cultivate grains, farms, and other products while restoring and preserving the quality of the soil for future to come. So that is the intent here. And, we would love to continue engaging this conversation with Delegate Otto in a private manner as well.
Thank you. Lindsay Thompson.
Good afternoon. Lindsay Thompson speaking right now on behalf of Maryland Grain Producers Association. So I did just want to say that the bill as amended that you're seeing here does not remove the existing definition for healthy soils. It's just adding an additional addendum where it says healthy soils may include regenerative practices, and then defining those regenerative practices and traditions. So we are supportive of the bill with this language. We don't see that it is changing the definition of healthy soils, which was hammered out with the Healthy Soils Committee and the stakeholders. And then a lot of the provisions under the regenerative practices and traditions, as Safe said, are just expanding some inclusivity with the practices and the farmers that are currently going on. And those were also discussed during the LEAF stakeholder meetings over the summer.
Thank you, Lindsay. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will shift gears here. The other aspect, I think Kristen mentioned, you moved something with the amendment that Dana Delegate Stein put forward that moved into another article.
Yeah,
under
so
the LEAP
so
program.
so the original amendment language came in to be added the definitions under the cost sharing program. And from a drafting perspective, I just said to Delegate Stein, I said, hey, these terms aren't used in that subtitle, so is it okay if I move them to where those terms are actually being referenced? And he said, okay. I'm not sure if the department I didn't get a chance to finish the conversation with the department on the reasoning for including it under the other section. I was from a drafting perspective, we don't normally define terms in subtitles that don't exist in that subtitle. So the conversation we didn't quite go full circle with the conversation yet.
So that's not part of this bill at this time.
So it is in the reprint. Not in the the definitions are included as part of the LEAF program. It's not included as part of the cost share subtitle.
I'm sorry, Secretary Addicks, did you want to expand on that for Delegate Otto? Because I want him comfortable.
Sure, I can expand on that. Delegate Otto, the way that the way that Kristen redrafted it in this reprint works perfectly well, has the exact same intent. The reason that we had suggested putting it under the ag cost share subtitle instead of the LEAF subtitle is because If it's in the LEAF subtitle, it is specific to LEAF. If it is in the ag cost share title and then referred to in LEAF, then it is, from our perspective, system-wide. So it is now a definition that would be baked into not just LEAF, but also our ag cost share program and beyond. The other reason is that in the ag cost share subtitle, we already have definitions of buffers, various buffers. This would be an additional definition of buffers. So I think maybe simplistically we thought, let's put the buffer definition where the other buffer definitions are and refer to it in the LEAF, rather than it being the only practice that is defined in the LEAF subtitle. In other words, LEAF can be about practice that is defined where other such practices are defined. That said, I'm not in the business of running out the clock. So if committee ends up being comfortable with this as is, it's same, and we'll go with it.
Well, I think it's sensible to put it in that subtitle. Actually, that does make sense. So.
Yeah, I was going to also say, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't draft bills, I would certainly defer to counsel about, where this best fits. And I think and if I'm correct, if I'm hearing the secretary and Kristen correctly, if this is in the other section, then it applies everywhere versus just applying to the program. Did I hear that correctly?
I guess the issue that, the way I was looking at it is, so the other references to different types of buffers that are in that subtitle is because there are provisions of law that address those types of buffers that are in that subtitle, and there's nothing that addresses the fixed natural buffers in that subtitle. So it was really from a drafting point of view, the way that the definition sections are organized, they're specific to it's either like in this article, in this section, in this subtitle, that kind of thing. And so just from that point of view, it didn't seem to be relevant. I guess you could put it in there, I guess, and it'd be like a model. It's just generally not how we put definitions into law.
That's fine.
And as stated, we're good either way. Just wanted to explain why the first draft was in one place and why it makes sense to have it here.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm fine with this as well. I can understand the Secretary's point about putting it with the cost share practices, but in the interest of moving the bill ahead, I'm fine keeping it the way it is. Thank you.
I want to continue to open it up for additional questions. Delegate Jacobs.
All right, so back on page 10 of the bill, when we're talking about water quality.
Yes.
I actually started on 9, but
Yes.
I guess you could say started with provide a consistent statewide approach for improving water quality monitoring data. And then flipping over page 10, that first paragraph under number 2, I'm concerned about the dead zones that we're having. And I know you're saying that some of this language is very broad, but there needs to be more testing done on these dead zones that we're having that seem to be more consistent and not so much at one portion of the summer, but from spring until fall. That is very problematic. And, I hear Chesapeake Bay Foundation say how much better they are, but I can tell you in reality, they're not. And I want to make sure that this water quality portion of this bill is addressing a more comprehensive look at trying to figure out what these dead zone problems are, how broad they are in the bay and what may be causing that problem.
Is it fair to say that under the definition addressing climate change impacts, that was potentially an impact? You don't,
I looked at that climate change impact, and I want somebody on the record to verify that they're going to step up their game on this dead zone monitoring, because, I've been talking about this for several years and it continues to be a big problem.
well, if the department or SAFE can speak to that, it'd be lovely.
Of course, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Delegate Jacobs, for your consistent concern on those. I know we have had a number of conversations about addressing a broader scope of those water quality monitoring issues. Look, the current program, it's about 4 decades old, and this allows us to really modernize our program and expand the scope with updated science and updated technological advancement, which we believe will address a lot of the concerns that Delegate has articulated. One other thing I want to highlight is the C subsection, which will allow or authorize the department to work with a lot of citizenry water quality monitoring groups and incorporate the data that they're identifying and getting into the broader program that the department is running. So this will allow us to really expand our scope and reach to a lot of other areas that we previously have not reached.
Yeah, there should be some sort of mechanism, app or whatever, to speak with the watermen on a daily basis that are hands-on, right on, as it's happening, so to speak, where you can identify these areas. But I'm just concerned that, that you almost, if you don't say it, it don't exist, because I've been having this battle for years over, one organization's interpretation and reality are a long ways apart. So it has to be some improvement made here, whether you come up with something. And I don't know how broad this language is. I mean, I guess you could address it due to climate change impacts, I assume. But, we need to step that game up on gathering that information, because it is a serious problem. And I don't think the current monitoring stations are adequate, in addressing all these dead zones. So I just want to make sure that that's somehow in here.
And again, while it's not specific, it sounds like, according to SAFE, it's a possibility, given the partnerships and the collection of data. I mean, I think, as we know, is that I believe that government should be efficient. I think it should be high quality, but I think sometimes we know that we can't do all this stuff, but there are other people who do it well. And I think what I'm hearing is that there are other people that have this information as well, and then we're going to be partnering and collaborating so that we get kind of a full data set from data that we may not be able to collect, or that we're not collecting because other people are, as I see it, and it may include those factors. It seems like it would include those types of factors, Delegate Jacob. But again, I hear you, and
Well, I don't want to run the clock out, but I'd like to have a conversation with SAFE and perhaps the department on the ways we can improve that.
Well, as I mentioned in the last meeting, that we would be moving these amendments and hopefully moving this bill. So I really want to just figure out, is this like life or death for you? Like that you need to talk to someone? Can we at least move the amendments and then have further conversations? Because as I see it, this is
I
a
understand
non-consequential bill, and yeah, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying.
I do want to make sure that you're getting what you need.
A bill like this, 28 pages, it makes me nervous, just in general.
It makes me nervous too, but as I go through it, when you condense what actual information is in here, it's literally only 5 pages. But
I know, words have meanings, and I just want to make sure that we're all, getting on the same page here on a bill like that does this much or not. I am very thankful for the secretary for adding the language of charter boat captains in on 13, 14, and 18, I think it is.
And Delegate Jacobs, what you should know is after that phone call, I was getting text messages and emails late at night saying they literally jumped on the phone with the AG to get this language. And so, yes, please do thank them.
I do. I appreciate it. I did talk with the secretary about it, and I do appreciate it. I know it matters to a lot of people that have been severely
Sure.
harmed in the past year or so.
Delegate Jacobs, I'm going to ask SAFE and or the secretary or to contact you right after this meeting, but I am going to ask if folks are comfortable. There'll be a
Madam
motion.
Chair, they don't
Yes.
have to contact me right after this meeting. I just want to have a conversation with them at some point.
Well, I would like them to contact you as soon as possible because that's my will, because I think it's important. I don't want them to call you next week. I don't want them to call you 2 weeks from now. If it's today, great. If it's tomorrow, wonderful. But I do want them to get back to you ASAP, and I think that's what SAFE's job is, and I think that's the secretary's job is to ensure that.
I've already got the message from SAFE.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I have sent the message to Delegate Jacobs right
Yeah,
now.
I got it.
I appreciate it. Is there a motion to move the amendments to this?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Okay. Second.
Any further discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
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 Any opposition to the amendments? Amendments are passed. Is there a
Move
motion
bill
to
as
move the
amended,
bill?
Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, discussions, points about the bill as amended? Mr. Otto?
Thank you. What's the fiscal note on this now?
The
Are there any
fiscal note is
changes
still the
to the
same.
net?
It's $900,000. It hasn't changed, hasn't gone up, it hasn't gone down. And quite frankly, if I've read this correctly, this money is essentially money that already essentially exists and has kind of, I hate to use the word repurposed, but it has been allocated by the governor within the general fund. So yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it
just
does
wanted
not
to be
decrease
clear
it,
on
it
it.
doesn't increase it, it doesn't decrease it, it keeps it all the same. I love your fiscal responsibility tagging. Okay. All right. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Passes unanimously. Thank you so much. I do want to let folks go because, and I'll let Secretary 1 minute, because I know folks got to get to their next meeting and or try to eat something like I have. I'm sorry, I've been chewing on these potato chips. I did because I knew this bill was big. We do have another bill to approve. It's the bill, Delegate Ruth's Bill 731. We did essentially move, oh my God, where are my notes? We moved the bill with amendments and we did pass the bill. And so I believe it may or may not be on the list depending on whether or not on the full voting list if appropriations approve the bill or not. So I just wanted to make that point. And Mr. Addix, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say thank you. I was doing it with a thumbs up, but thank you for the seconds. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Quite welcome. My friends, we are adjourned.